It works. Why don't you come down and the rest of the staff that you feel need to be an appearance here?
Andre,
I'd like to have everybody in every seat come down, but there's many as you want to bring down.
I don't think we can fit.
Okay.
Y'all come on. Just line them up. All right.
I think this is a very special occasion because we have outside some very unique pieces of equipment. And they're the type of equipment not many people can steal and run off with. In the first place, they can't get into it, and they can't figure out how to run it. And they probably don't want to play anyway. So I tell you this, so when you talk about the Pearland and the opportunities we have, let me get my proclamation set up here, that I think it's unique, and I want to appreciate each one of you. I know my city council are very proud. We got some of the guys right now working on some little facilities outside right now until we get it fixed. But you're the guys that kind of run the place. But let me tell you what my proclamation says. That's a sack to carry it away in. And it's a proclamation of the Office of the Mayor of the City of Pearland, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vitally important to the suitability, sustainability, and reliance of the community and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the City of Pearland. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated effort of the public works and the first responders, who are professionals, leaders, supervisors, employees at all levels of the government, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting the city streets, our drainage right-of-ways, our water supply, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities that are essential for our citizens, which I think is a great start. And whereas it is the public's interest for the citizens, both civil leaders and children of our City of Pearland, to gain knowledge of and maintain the progressive interest and understanding of the importance of the public works and the services they provide in their respective communities. Whereas the year 2019 marks the 59th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, and is now, therefore I time read by the power vested in me as the mayor of this fine city, Pearland, Texas, to hereby designate the week, May 19th through 25th, 2019 is the National Public Works Week in the City of Pearland, and I urge all and encourage all citizens to join with the representatives of the Public Works Association and the governmental entities in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, our managers, employees, and to recognize the sustainability and contribution of all those who protect our city wealth, health, safety, quality of life, and therefore, public works, it starts here. And I present this to you. This is what it looks like. This is what you guys have earned, and I'll tell you, it's amazing what has happened in this city in the Gulf Coast area. And I'd like to take a look at that. If it looks okay, we'll have our picture taken with it. That's great. Okay, Josh, yours direction. Okay.
Wow. Thanks, sir. Make a few comments. Am I making a few comments?
I'm not going to make a whole lot of comments because we've got a busy night, but I do want to thank every last one of the staff that made it out here tonight and all of our public works for what you do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you and your good guys out there working on it for us. Appreciate it. You know, what you guys do is amazing because we're going through some hurricanes that were kind of amazing, and each one of them has a different color. But it's really nice and really appropriate that you are here with the equipment that you use to share this with us tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
If we get all public works staff to come right up front, we'd like to get one picture with the director of Ms. Pearson, get everybody together. Come on up.
Come in like y'all like each other. No evidence. Take the cover off. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a joint public hearing. City Council and City of Pearland and the Planning and Zoning Commission, City of Pearland. In a call to order, the first item is the purpose of the hearing, for staff introduction, and format of the meeting.
Yes, sir. First, we'll have a call to order, then the roll call with both the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then introduction of agenda and format. For each meeting, there will be a call to order, followed by a staff report, an applicant presentation, and then the public can either have their comments in support or opposition. Please come forward to the microphone over there. State your name and address for the record and be brief within a 3-minute time frame. Please complete a speaker's card and give it to our recording secretary over here on the right-hand side. Then council, commission, and staff will have a discussion, and that will be followed by an adjournment. This format follows for both the joint public hearing and the joint special meeting. On tonight's agenda, we have one zone change request for property at Kirby and Fruget Road. This will have first and second reading of the adopting ordinance by council at the regular meetings in June. The French Quarter was pulled from this agenda as they're working on their plan development to further refine that. For the joint special meeting, there will be a City Council vote after that item. City Council has the option to either approve as requested, approve with conditions, deny the request, or table the item. On for that agenda, there are 2 items. One is a duplex on Grand Street, and the other is for the School of Rock. That meeting will happen after the joint public hearing.
Mm-hmm. Good. I appreciate that. In our agenda, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission, would you give us the purpose of this hearing?
Purpose of the hearing is a request by David Valles, Brown McGregor Architects Incorporated applicant on behalf of David Tier, representing Loza Houston Incorporated owner, for approval of a zoning change from Spectrum District S-3 to the LNR Clear Creek Spectrum Plan Development District on approximately 19.598 acres of land. General location is the northeast corner of Kirby Drive and Fruget. Is that what you said? Fruget Road, Pearland, Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And moving in our agenda to item number 2, which is application information case summary. Item A is staff report.
Sir, as discussed, this is a zone change to add property into the LNR Plan Development Zone District. It will add about just over 19 acres of property. The future land plan shows this area to be within the Lower Kirby Urban District. The proposed uses of the site are for off-site parking, and then for future medical research development for another building to be in that area. This is the zoning and aerial map. Lonza has completed their construction of their facility just to the north in the LNR Plan Development District. This is the future land plan. And then our code conformity table. The only 2 items to generally note are the thoroughfare plan. Fruget Road is a very narrow road of about 20 to 40 foot in right-of-way, which would eventually be expanded through the platting process. And then the property will, of course, be platted immediately into a flag lot and then later on into a much larger parcel for that future development to occur. And this meets the criteria for approval for expansion of a planned development district. That completes our staff report.
It completes your report.
Yes, sir.
Moving on our agenda, item B, which is applicant Is the applicant here for this particular project? And please, you have the benefit of the podium. And thank you for being here. And of course, we have some rules of which Tim here will share with you.
Thanks, sir. If you please take your name and address for the purpose of the record, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
My name is David Tier. I'm the Senior Engineering Manager for Lonza Houston. My address is 12414 Tottenham Drive, Houston, Texas 77031.
Good. Tell us your story.
Just that Lonza has secured the property just south of us, and what we see is, or foresee for our future growth, is zoning like for like to our current operations.
Does that conclude your comments, sir? Does that conclude your comments?
That does.
Thank you, sir.
Good. Thank you. And moving in our agenda to item C, which is staff wrap-up comments.
Nothing additional.
Okay, none of those. Moving to item 3 on our agenda. Persons wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. And I'll have our Mayor Pro Tem handle that item.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any member of the audience like to speak either for or against this proposed modification to the plan development? Second time, any member of the audience like to speak either for or against this proposed modification to the plan development? Third and final time, any member of the audience that would like to speak either for or against this proposed plan development? No takers, Mayor.
Okay. Moving to item 4 on our agenda, we have an opportunity for the council, the planning commission, and the staff to do a discussion from the information available. And starting with the council, Councilmember Reed, have a comment?
No comment, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Hernandez,
No comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Little, Councilmember Moore.
Just thank you for bringing the business here and expanding.
I like that. And Councilmember Owens.
No comment.
No comments, okay. Moving to Planning Commission for your discussion.
No comments, Mayor.
Discussion, okay. And back to our staff for discussion from their perspective.
Nothing additional to share.
Okay. On my agenda, it says item 5, adjournment, which I shall do. Moving in our agenda to, and I will adjourn that particular meeting, joint public hearing. Moving to council, planning and zoning commission, city of Pearland, joint public meeting for today, and the council chamber members. Call to order, council member, planning commission. Or membership, call to order. Is your membership here in order?
We'll call a meeting for the, also for the Planning and Zoning Commission. All members are present with the exception of Daniel Tunstall and Lanny Cade.
Okay, and then the council call to order. We have one council member, Councilmember Carbone, is absent from tonight from the meeting. Item 3 on our agenda is roll call. Is item 4 is introduction of the agent and format of the hearing with staff.
As previously discussed, it follows the similar hearing procedures. Applicants or staff will have their presentation. Applicants will then come up. And please be brief and to the point with your comments, should you have any from the public standpoint, as mentioned.
Complete your report.
Yes, sir.
Okay, moving to joint special hearing number 1. I'll ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of our meeting.
This is for conditional use permit application number CUP 19-00031, a request by Emily Besser, applicant, on behalf of Thomas L. Besser, owner, for the approval of a conditional use permit to allow two-family dwelling duplex use located within the Old Town site, mixed use OT-MU district on approximately 0.287 acres of land, general location 2513 South Grand, Pearland, Texas.
That completes your portion. Okay, moving to item A on our agenda. Application information and case summary. Item 1 is staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first case is a request for a two-family dwelling on Grand Street in Old Town Mixed-Use Zone District with future land use of Village District. As you can see, this is a zoning and aerial map showing the property is located in Old Town Mixed-Use. And this is a future land use map showing the property is located in Village District.
Okay.
This is a proposed preliminary site plan of the duplex. The proposed two-family dwelling meets a comprehensive plan and is compatible with Village District future land use plan. Grand Boulevard is a minor collector with sufficient width. The proposed use is consistent with UDC. The property has an approved plat and is waiting for recordation. And the property has access to city water and sewer system. Staff recommends approval for the proposed duplex or two-family units. Duplex for the following reason, as it meets the criteria, including comprehensive plan, consistency with a zoning purpose and intent of applicable zoning district, and it meets the standard of the zoning district. And that completes the staff report.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Moving to item 2, applicant presentation. Is the applicant here from this project? Please come up. The podium is yours. And Mayor Pro Tem will give you the guidelines.
Thank you, ma'am. If you can please state your name and address for the purpose of record. Please keep your comments 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you so much. Emily Simone Besser, and my address is 2103 Marys Creek Lane in Pearland. I'm in front of you today because we purchased a property on Grand and we saw an opportunity to continue to revitalize Old Town Pearland. Spent some time with Martin's team and engineering to understand what our restrictions would be and put a lot of thought into what we would propose to put there, obviously taking into account integrity of the neighborhood, keeping the drawings in line with what is already there. We took into account right-of-way and drainage, and we put forth what we thought was the best proposal for that space. That being said, I want to say my husband and I are Pearland residents. My husband and father-in-law own a business here for 3 generations, and we want to figure out how we can come to terms with the neighbors, because I do understand there's some concerns about how we've laid it out. So we're open to hearing what everyone has to say and hopefully coming into a place where we can all agree, but we'd like to move forward with the plans for a duplex. Thank you for giving me some time.
Good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Moving in our agenda to item number 3, persons wishing to speak for or against the proposed request. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 4 people who've submitted a forms stating they'd like to speak on this item. I will call you up as I have them stacked, no particular order. Again, I'll remind you, but the rules are please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have about 30 seconds left. So, first contestant, Diafalo San Diego. Thank you, sir. If you could please state your name and address for the purpose of the record.
Good evening. My name is Teofilo Santiago, and I own the property that backs into this property here, the 2513. And for me, I lived here for about 10 years in Pearland, and I really enjoy the area. I like some of the changes that they've made so far, real positive. But for me, putting a two-story in that location right in front of my backyard, I don't think it's a great idea for me. I think that it might drop our value in property, and I'm sure that it's going to increase the taxes. So for me, I don't think it's a great idea, and I voted no.
Does that conclude your comments, sir?
Excuse me?
Does that conclude your comments? Does that conclude your comments, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Next, Mr. Rick Sims. Thank you, Mr. Sims. If you could please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
My name is Rick Sims. I live at 1931 Timber Creek Drive. I own a business less than a half a block from this proposal at 2438 South Park, Sims Automotive. I also own a property across the street from the auto shop. It's a single dwelling home at 3702 Pear. I too am concerned about the proposal. I am not for a multifamily development. I'd like to continue the plan that we have so far in the Old Town site with the single homes that we have there. Also, I'm very concerned about, in looking at the plat and the drawing, that the house is entirely too close to the front of the property. Anyone that's residing near the property is not going to be able to see the street for the duplex. I don't think that it goes with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. We formed a Old Town Site Business Coalition several years ago, and shortly thereafter I remodeled my building, and I abided in the rules of the business coalition, and there was a color plat as well as the way they wanted to see the outsides of these houses and businesses. And I might add that almost doubled the cost of my remodel of my building to try to abide in that, and I put a lot of money into that building. And I'm kind of disappointed because it doesn't look like we're following that same plan. And the goal was to maintain this Old Town site to be something along the grounds of like Old Town Spring. And, I just don't think this is a well thought out plan of this building. It's going to be close to the front of the property line where all these older homes are set back substantially. And to me, it doesn't go with the neighborhood. So I'm speaking against it for those reasons.
Thank you, sir. Next, Mr. Kevin Fuller. Mr. Fuller, if you can please state your name and address for the purpose of the record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
We're speaking on behalf of others. Do we have 5 minutes?
If you have a coalition, yes, you can have 5.
He's through.
Whenever you're ready.
First and foremost, my name is Kevin Fuller. Reside at 2501 South Grand Boulevard, Pearland, Texas. And I'd like to first address the members of Planning and Zoning and the City Council with the question in mind, regardless of the neighborhood that you live in, assuming it's a single-family residential neighborhood, would you consider it additive or aesthetically pleasing to introduce a multifamily dwelling in the middle of a block? Regardless. That being said, we're here today to recognize or to oppose the provisional use permit and development plan that's for 2513 South Grand Boulevard. We are not opposed, and in fact are proponents of economic development and revitalization in the old town site. However, we believe the request for the CUP and development plan as currently presented will have a significant adverse impact on adjacent and neighboring properties. As we understand it, the purpose of a conditional use permit is suitable only when subject to standards and conditions that assure compatibility with adjoining uses, particularly as they relate to, quote, design and configuration. We do not believe the proposed development to be compatible with surrounding properties, nor do we believe the design and configuration of the development meets the standard. The objections we have stem from these primary concerns, noting 6 particular items. First and foremost, the proposed multifamily development is not consistent with the existing character of the neighboring properties. The proposed configuration of the development has building setbacks much smaller than neighboring properties which would place the existing uses at a disadvantage that do not currently exist. The short front setbacks and two-story nature of the proposed development will create a negative visual impact on adjacent properties. The proposed development will not enhance one of the primary objectives of the city's comprehensive plan, namely to, quote, conserve existing neighborhoods. Several of the homes on this block are among the oldest in Pearland, being built in the 1920s and 30s. The proposed development is contrary to another primary objective of the comprehensive plan that says to, quote, protect and preserve historical buildings that reflect Pearland's heritage. Section 2.4.3.4 of the Unified Development Code also states that the purpose of the Old Town Site District is to, quote, reinforcing land use patterns and character. The proposed development is contrary to this requirement. We specifically take issue with staff recommendation item number 2 on page 2 of the application that states the proposed use does not generate adverse effects, including visual impacts on adjacent properties. We could not disagree more. If this were your neighborhood and you were in a single-family residential home, would you like a multi-unit development built right in the middle of your block? When you couple that with the fact that every other home that's built on this entire block in the last 95 years is situated well back from the street, the current 2-story structure as proposed sitting at the front lot line would tower over all other neighboring structures, protrude from the existing lot in the whole city block in such a fashion that could only be described in such terms as blatantly, flagrantly, and strikingly dissimilar from the remainder of the neighborhood. This is by definition a visual impact. Even the most casual observer, and not from a city planner's perspective, looking at aerial photos, there might be seemingly available space to develop. But for a block full of existing property owners, many of whom call it home and have been there for decades, this breaks the character of the neighborhood. The staff recommendation all state that the proposed duplex is, quote, compatible with the comprehensive plan and the future land use. The staff does not offer supporting data for this. However, the comprehensive plan does specifically list 6 stated objectives of the land use plan within the comprehensive plan. The first of these stated objectives, which one might infer might be the most significant, is to conserve existing neighborhoods. To any property owner that lives on this city block, they certainly consider it a neighborhood, and they can't think of any other way to preserve the existing neighborhood of single-family residential homes and by preventing the inclusion of a multifamily development at its core. Another specific objective detailed in the city's comprehensive plan relative to the old town site is to enhance the individual characters of each of the 4 quadrants that comply in the village district and to identify, protect, and preserve historical buildings that reflect Pearland's heritage. The comprehensive stated plan to identify, protect, and preserve historic buildings that reflect Pearland heritage. Certainly the current home that sits on the subject property was originally built in 1934 and was restored in the past few years. The property next door is one of the city's oldest homes, originally built in 1924 and was once the home of the former Pearland ISD Superintendent Stephen Presner, for whom our stadium is is named and resided there over 50 years ago. The home behind it was built in 1939 and was also recently renovated. It would seem that these homes meet the threshold for historical and for being a, quote, reflection of Pearland's heritage. Indeed, one of the adjacent property is but one of the few things left in Pearland that is older than our very esteemed mayor. We don't know how anyone would advocate for historical preservation by allowing a multifamily development in the center of such a historically significant structure. The staff recommendation also makes reference to conformance with the Unified Development Code, but only with regard to the specific lot and setback requirements of the Old Town Mixed-Use Zoning District. However, Section 2.4.3.4 of the bullet point number 2 states that, among other things, the purpose of the Old Town Site District is to reinforce existing land use patterns and character. As previously stated, given the current land use pattern of solely single-family residential homes and characterized by those single-story homes being similarly set back on the lots from the street, the proposed development would seem to be definitively not in conformance one of the stated purposes of the existing zoning district, as defined in the Unified Development Code. In summary, the city block surrounded by Grand, Pear, Park, and Walnut currently contains over a dozen residential structures. Every single one of them was built as a single-story, single-family residential home. This has been the case for nearly 100 years. This particular block is somewhat of its own little neighborhood right in the middle of the original city site. Most property owners are residents and or business owners in the tiny site as well and are invested in the community. While a duplex may be considered a, quote, allowable use of the property by city staff, it doesn't necessarily make it right, according to neighboring property owners. There are other undeveloped properties and tracts of land that may be better suited to multifamily development. But to begin to allow, quote, conditional uses such as multifamily developments through subdividing existing land parcels against the will of and in direct opposition from and at a disadvantage to a multitude of the neighbors would be setting a strong message from our elected officials as to their stance on protecting the property rights and protecting the neighborhoods of their constituents. We believe that that is bad in so many ways. It would be a bad precedent, bad policy, bad politics, and bad for Pearland. The Old Town Site Development District Plan was laid out more than a decade ago. We, along with many others in the community, bought into that concept and that idea and made significant investments in the Old Town Site ourselves, with the primary intention heretofore being the preservation, protection, and revitalization of what there was in the Old Town Site already, while maintaining the existing character and content of the community. We would like to see the area developed in the right way and hopefully not against the wishes of the community in general. Please vote no on the conditional use permit. I will say, since I originally drafted this and I've sent this to city staff, I have spoken to the applicant, and we had a very amicable conversation, which I wish we would have had some time ago. We are, to reiterate, as I stated to her, we are not against the development necessarily of the property, only in its present form, particularly being a multifamily unit on the property being set forth online. And in fact, I told her that if the plan was to have a single-family residential home set back in the neighborhood or on the lot, as were all the other existing structures, I would not only be in favor of it, I would be speaking on her behalf in support of the project. Thank you for your time.
Last, we have Ms. Shauna Bynum. Thank you, ma'am. If you could please state your name and address for the first record. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Certainly. Shauna Curley Bynum, here on behalf of both myself and my husband. We reside at 2522 Park Avenue. We are adamantly opposed to this this permit being approved. Something that I do want to go ahead and open with, that I don't think anybody has said anything about yet, is a serious issue of privacy. Although there don't seem to be any windows on the very back of the build, there are on the sides, and we are within about 200 feet of this build. And basically, they're just going to have a bird's eye view of our backyard as well as our surrounding neighbors, and that is unacceptable. And is in reference to everything that Mr. Fuller just spoke about, I completely echo his sentiments, 100%. Maintaining a system of general uniformity in the neighborhood, we are all single-family, single-story dwellings. And I am 100% in favor of that kind of a build if the Bessers are willing to do that. I think that would be a great idea, but not for a two-story duplex in our neighborhood. Absolutely not. And I think that's it, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other member of the audience that'd like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Mr. Fuller, if you need to speak, you got to speak in the microphone for the purpose of the record. You do have to go back up there. Whatever you speak needs to be spoken to the microphone. We kind of allowed a lot of time, so please keep it quick.
All right, I just wanted to say that I neglected to mention that in the packet that I gave each of you all before I started speaking, included in the packet were memorandums from some of the neighboring property owners who were not able to make it for various reasons to speak, and asked that I present their written opposition to the plan as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the audience that like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit?
If I could just ask kindly, Mr. Fuller, the city secretary did not get a copy of your packet. As you distributed it to everybody else, the secretary would like to have an official copy for the records. Looks like that's being satisfied now. Thank you.
You can, but we'll have an opportunity to talk to you and ask direct questions. Again, is there anybody else that would like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? That's it, Mayor.
Does that complete the speakers?
That's all the speakers, Mayor.
Okay, moving in our agenda to item number B, and we're still in the joint special meeting number 1. Item B on the agenda is Planning Commission, Council, and staff discussion of the material so far. And that's the Planning Commission for any discussion you have at this point.
Do you have any comments? Do you have any comments? My only comment really is I really identify with the lack of privacy comment, having that affected my property personally. I will say that any two-story house, you're going to have the same problem. So as long as they're meeting setback requirements, there's not a lot you can really do about it. That's my only comment.
That completes your report, sir?
Yes, sir.
Moving in our agenda to item B2, which is council having starting with Councilmember Reed. Any comment?
Yeah, I have a question for the developer. Yes, please. Hey, good evening. So Mr. Fuller mentioned that you all had a conversation. I guess as part of that conversation, forget the single family, but I guess are you all opposed to maybe doing a setback of your property? You are opposed?
No. I'm just nodding. Sorry. Not opposed. In fact, that's exactly what I was inferring. So our intention with it being so close to the front is that we have there's zero, as many of you may know, there's 0 minimum feet in the front, and there's no front of yard parking. So we push the structure forward to allow for parking in the back. Have y'all seen, would you like a copy to hold? Would that help? I have some.
I have one in front.
We have it in our packet.
Okay, great. Yeah, so things like that. Another friend of the neighbors had mentioned to me that maybe changing the front porch from an architecture perspective so that it presented from the outside as one house and then you kind of went through a door to the 2 doors. Things like that are architectural changes or changes to the site plan, no issue. We just, would like to move forward with a duplex.
Okay. And I think probably Councilman Perez will touch on this a little bit, but there's things that can be built by right that are a lot worse than what she's developing. And when I say a lot worse, more units and can be built by right on that land without her having to come to us. More than that, even a single family home still requires a CUP. And so, from the standpoint of it doesn't look like the rest of the homes. Well, obviously, this home that she's going to build is not 90 some odd years old. But I do agree with Mr. Fuller's statements that the best possible way to maintain the historic value of that area and the historic look of that area is important. And so, whatever can be done to do that. I think the word multifamily in general just kind of has a stigma. I know, as a council, we've dealt with that, at least since I've been on council. And it's even worse when you think of the apartment complexes that are built right behind people's homes, in parts of Pearland. They built these $300,000, $400,000 homes, and then all of a sudden an apartment complex that has 300 doors pops up. And so this is something that's two-family. I don't necessarily see it as a threat to the community or a threat to that area. But the way that it's laid out logistically, I could see, that looks very awkward for some, one place to have no setback and then everybody else has, some type of setback. And there's probably some other aesthetic things that I'm sure Mr. Fuller and the folks that he spoke on behalf of wouldn't mind, kind of sitting down with you. And so, that's my 2 cents for now. But like I said, I think there's more to it from what's by right or what's allowed by right. But I'll go ahead and pass it on to Councilman Perez.
If I may just quickly say thank you. I intentionally left that out of my comments because I think coming from me that could have come across the wrong way. But I appreciate you making the point. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Perez?
Thank you, Mayor.
I think we're through with it. I'm sorry. Unless you have...
Don't run off, ma'am. So just kind of going through, this is a mixed-use area. There's some variance between what's allowed by right, what's not allowed by right, what requires conditional use. And there's, to Member Reed's point, I think, in my opinion, this isn't a multifamily development. It's by zoning, it can only be two families. They're just mushed in together. Essentially, you have two single-family residential zones that are on a zero lot line, and we have the ability, or they have the ability, with another 50-foot lot to have three single-family residential homes mushed with the zero lot line, so long as they call it townhomes and put in a 2-hour firewall. That's allowed by right. I think maybe we need to look at why that is the case. It's a dwelling townhomes in Old Town mixed use is permitted by right. Single family is conditional use. A patio home is conditional use, and a dwelling two family, which is what this classifies as, not multifamily. It's a dwelling two family. It requires conditional use. So there are things that can be done to where essentially they get the same use without having to come to us and without having to notify the neighbors. I think maybe that's something we need to look at, is why there's that one single-family residential use that's permitted by right. But there are a number of other uses in here that, at least if I were a neighbor to this, I would prefer to have a duplex than, say, a commercial amusement outdoor. Let's see, what else? A playground. There are a lot of commercial uses. I go through them. A tennis court, lighted. And I'm just reading down the rolls as I go through. I mean, there's a lot of commercial uses that I think could eventually be more impactful if this development doesn't come through. I think that's one of the things we balance. If the CUP gets denied, what you may end up with may be significantly worse than what is proposed. That's one of the things we have to balance. For me, it's, does this really significantly modify the character of the area and the intent when we plan the zone? That's certainly a matter of opinion. What I have to judge is, did we fairly communicate that as best we could in the documents? And I think what we've tried to show in the documents is that we're kind of encouraging this kind of use, but we want to take a look at it, and that's where we are. Mr. Fuller, I know you and I have had a side conversation on this in the past. I appreciate y'all's passion, I really do, and I don't dismiss everything y'all are saying. I don't feel as if it is as negative to the overall area as some of the other uses that could come in here by right. And maybe that's something we need to look at is, what we're trying to achieve in the character of this zone, and whether that zero lot line setback on the front is what we're trying to achieve. One of the things that we could do possibly is in the conditional use permit, and the word condition will have a double meaning here. This is, your use is permitted by condition of us approval. What we can do is add additional conditions to that approval. We could say that you have to have a 20-foot setback. The building has to be pushed back. We could say it can't be 2 stories. If we limited the stories to 1 story, would that negatively affect you?
I hate to answer a question on the spot, but I think my instinct is that for me, I'm sorry, I thought we were making eye contact.
We are.
Come on up. You can't speak from there. Tommy, you can't speak from there. You
Yeah, if you can come up and answer the question, you got to state your name and address for the purpose of the record.
Thomas Besser, 2103 East Marys Creek, Pearland. The main reason with the setback was to do the parking in the back. But if it was the 2-story thing and we came with something to keep the 4 required parking spots in the front and make it a longer 1-story, I think we could come up with something like that. We were trying to make use of what the city was requiring to get what we wanted in there. We wanted to be able to, with the 2-story, to have a 3-bedroom that was more bigger with the right price point that for the neighborhood to not have smaller, more units, something like that.
So the way this process will work is a conditional use permit. The way our relatively new process will work is you're going to get the answer tonight, one way or the other.
Okay.
We can hear from the other council members as far as what they believe. But if there is a consistency that by pushing the building to the rear and capping it at 1 story, that addresses some of the comments of the neighbors, and if y'all would be still able to move forward, then that may be a way to find compromise between those who wish to input their decisions, which is what the conditional use permit process is for, but still allow y'all to develop the property so it's a useful venture for you.
I think the easy answer right here, right now, if we could move I think we could give the parking spots in the front and position the building to the back, but still keep it a 2-story with windows in mind, no windows on the back, no porches on the back, not anything like that. And to the left of the property is mostly tall trees and ligustrums, and I own the property directly to the right. So it is, I think the window situation with no windows on the back, if we can try to make it aesthetically, move it back, putting two parking spots for each unit in the front, and just going with the house, like with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. It's going to be a pier and beam structure. It's going to have the same siding that all the other houses in the neighborhood have. If there's a paint color that they want, we want to work with what the community wants.
Well, we have a specific color palette for that, and we have a color palette for the city in general. But I think Old Town. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a color palette specifically for Old Town. Correct?
Correct.
Well, you'll have to meet in that, and usually those are kind of muted colors. You're not going to be able to paint it pink or anything like that.
Okay.
But maybe I offer that as a suggestion for when we approve it in the next meeting, which is immediately following this meeting, not by day, but by after we close this meeting, we have the next one. the joint special meeting, we could add a condition to say, push the building setback to 20 feet and cap it to 1 story. And maybe that's a compromise for everybody.
We were hoping to do one or the other. Push it back 2-story.
Councilmember, the UDC specifically prohibits parking in the front yard in the OTMU. So that wouldn't be something we could add as a condition because it would violate the terms of the UDC.
Okay. So the 4 parking, they need 2 spaces per unit?
Correct.
So essentially, the green space in the front is all they have to operate with.
They could move the, I was doing some rough measurements, off my phone. Potentially, there's about 20 foot that they've got between the rear parking as it sits currently, where the building could be shifted back. So not to be a 0 front lot line, but to move it back some. I can't guarantee that it's 20 feet.
Fair enough. If we had the 0 front lot line, do you think you could make 1 story work?
I don't, 0 and still have to have the parking. I don't think we can make it all work lengthwise.
We're saying we kept the front at the street.
If you had if you had 0 front lot line, you had it at the street, but had to flatten the property, the duplex out, you still had to have the 4 parking spaces.
Yeah, I just, because of the parking and the turn and the stuff, I don't think we're going to be able to get the length to have anything
Okay.
to be able to make it work. I don't know, with the no parking in the front, if there was a half garage or something like that, is that change? I mean, every house on the street has a garage and parking in the front, and so I realize the laws have changed and stuff, but if each unit had a half garage on each side, we'd have to be able to pull up to the garage.
Is that a possibility?
As the rules currently said, it does prohibit parking in the front. This was brought up during the UDC committee as something that we're looking to dive into when we go for our edits here in the coming future.
But if it was a garage, is that still kind of technically the same? If we shorten the driveway or the car don't fit, it will.
Believe that there's something within the Unified Development Code that would prohibit that because it's still the main entry from the front.
I don't want to monopolize the time. I know the other council members have something to contribute. I'm trying to find a compromise. Maybe, Mr. Fuller, you seem to be representing a lot of people here. If the building was 2 stories and pushed back 20 feet, would that satisfy some concerns? You got to speak in the microphone.
As much as people have asked me to voice their opinion, I'm not sure that I can speak specifically on their behalf because their concerns might be slightly different than mine. Certainly, many of them, if not most that I've spoken to, indicated that they weren't in favor of a 2-story structure. That was one of their primary concerns. So I believe that is one of the most significant issues, that it is a 2-story. I think one of the other issues is the front lot line. As I indicated to them, if it was a single-story home exactly, I mean, if it was just a mirror image of the one that's on the property now, I think everybody on that block would be in favor of it. And unfortunately, we haven't had a chance in a public forum speaking on behalf of a dozen other residents and property owners. It might be somewhat difficult to do. They might be over there going, I didn't tell him to say that. So I wouldn't want to get crossways to speak too much on their behalf. But as a adjacent property owner, certainly the 2-story is an issue for us. Having it set back on the property, I think visually is and being aesthetically pleasing is also a big concern.
Let's say this, from their perspective, it's kind of either or, possibly. If you had to pick one, front setback or 2-story. Hate to put you on the spot, but trying to find a compromise position.
I understand. And I believe the biggest issue with me making a compromise, what I might say might be a compromise for the neighboring property owners that are behind, if they say, well, whether it's on the front or back, I just don't want to be able to see over on hints in my backyard. So for them, it might be the two-story might be the bigger issue. What do you think? I think that the two stories seems to be one of the big sticking points, to be honest.
Appreciate that. I would like to, before I get done talking, I'd like to point out that Al Espinal Architects, your architect, is somebody I have a business relationship with. I have no dealing with this. I had no prior knowledge to his involvement in this, but for the public record, I want that to be known. That concludes my comments, Mayor.
You want to speak?
Mayor, just real quick. So it sounds like the setback is not a huge concern, or? I mean, the two-story is the most. Well, you know what? Honestly, this seems like something that both parties, can get together on, maybe outside of this meeting. I mean, before us making a decision, and maybe come back. And obviously, the other council members have to speak. But in my mind, it doesn't really seem like, I know you all don't want something worse, right? And there's a possibility of something worse being coming. If they decide to sell and somebody else comes and says, okay, some just commercial developer, and they want to build a 3-unit, they're by right, they can come in without you all's approval, 2-story, everything. And so, I think, kind of going back and maybe, putting this off. But again, other council members have to speak, but I don't see why, you all can't come to an agreement outside of us, trying to decide for you right now, because you're kind of on the spot and you got people that aren't here and so on and so on. So,
Councilmember Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. So I pulled this up looking at the trees that were mentioned. So if you're looking to the front of the property, if it were to be there, the trees to the left, they do look fairly tall. I'm trying to think where 2 stories would lie, but it looks like there is pretty good obstruction. But I guess my initial concern before we came here and everybody else started speaking, Mr. Fuller had written in his email that I don't know why, I loved this line, but it kind of illustrated how I was feeling, that it was blatantly, fragrantly, and strikingly dissimilar. That's kind of how I feel, and I have this area, Grand, as kind of a special place in my heart, but I just really like this area a lot, and maintaining the integrity of it, the look and feel is kind of an important thing, I think, especially kind of looking in the future if there's any potential to do anything else with this area, with the old town site. Just trying to preserve any integrity that we can to make that an as easy process as we can, should we have any future larger kind of plan development in mind. But at least for now, I think it seems like there are some challenges. I would not necessarily be opposed to hearing out some of the potential conditions that would be put forth and weighing those. I'm glad that the neighbor, or at least representatives and neighbors, are here. And if it is something that you would be willing to go and kind of talk offline, I guess, and bring it back once you've reached a little bit more of a consensus, it might help us instead of us just kind of throwing conditions out into the ether and seeing what you do with it. But that's really my big concern in the beginning, was just trying to do whatever we can to maintain the look and feel of the existing neighborhood. So I don't know that I personally have that big of an issue with 2 stories per se, if it's done in like a particular fashion, but I would prefer 1 story personally, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Little. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the developer's willingness to try to work with the people that are opposed to this duplex. From what I've heard, the setback, the 2-story, and the aesthetics are the primary complaints. I think the developer addressed the setback and the aesthetics, but unfortunately, making it 1 story is not going to work for them. As Councilman Reed and Perez have mentioned, somebody could come in there and put a building on that's much more offensive than a 2-story duplex. Matter of fact, the height limit would be 40 feet
for a commercial structure to come in there, which is probably about twice as tall as what these people are proposing. So you could have something that would be much more of an eyesore than what this is proposed to be. I like the willingness of the two sides to try to work this out, and hopefully we can reach a compromise on this. So that's all I have right now.
Or
Thank you, Mayor. Since you're here before us for conditional use permit, that means that there's reasons why this doesn't fit in that area. I'm not really in favor of this being in the area. I don't see how it makes sense there, aesthetically or any other way. As Councilman Little said, there are other things that can go in there that are much worse. But for me right now, I'm not really in favor of this.
Councilmember Owens?
I've got one question for Trent. Are you out there, Trent? Don't we have it on the plans to come in and do some improvement on this road on Grand Street?
On Grand, we don't have anything in the 5-year CIP. We've looked at different plans for the Old Town area in the past, but there's nothing pending as far as any kind of expansion or.
Well, I was just wondering because we're talking about the setback and everything. I didn't know if he's going to come back in curb gutter that roadway or what, but you have to be taking some more right away.
I would ask someone from the engineering department to see if there's any additional right-of-way required from what's existing per the thoroughfare plan.
Yeah, I don't know if Robert has seen that or not, but I know we had mentioned something about it coming and doing improvements on Grand Street.
Councilman Owens, we're speaking on Grand Avenue, is that correct?
Yeah.
I don't have, taking a look at it, we don't have any additional, there we go. It's wide enough with regards to what's stated for a minor collector, and so there shouldn't be any additional right-of-way needs necessary.
Okay, so I didn't know if we were going to come in concrete curb and gutter that or not.
We don't have anything in the current 5-year CIP, as Mr. Epperson had stated, for those improvements.
Okay. I guess, does the property have to be a 2-story? Or
Thank you for the question. I think the logic behind it is to allow us to build something that will rent at a price point that brings the right renters to the neighborhood. So we're just considering what we're using to build and what we can put inside the structure to make it attractive to renters that we think will continue to keep the neighborhood going in the right direction.
okay. You haven't done any kind of a rendering or anything on it, have you?
Of the inside?
Of the outside of what it architecturally, what it would look like?
Sure. Walk that over to you.
The renderings were also on page 18 of your packets.
No, well, it'd be a impact. So you're showing on here a maximum of 6 vehicle parking?
So the property currently has a house on it, on the southbound side of the property, and 2 of those spots are to give formal parking for our current renters at the structure that exists, and then 2 other spots per unit behind the duplex.
I know further down, I think on Old Alvin, there's duplexes going in down there. I can see where the residents out there would be concerned about the property and the look of the property that they have bought, previously in that area, and the concern, kind of keeping the same integrity that they have there now. I kind of wish there was an opportunity for to jointly to come back and be able to do something, working together with the residents down there and working something that would fit. Because there are other opportunities for stuff to come in that location that would be more aggressive than what this would be on there. But I still, from what I gather of listening to y'all earlier, is that the windows are not going to be to where they can see any other property.
So the answer would be yes. If you look at the second page of the packet I handed you, the lower right, lower left shows you the east elevation, which is what faces the back neighbors. We intentionally put no porch or windows on that side of the house. Okay. There's windows in the front and on the side. And as Tommy Besser mentioned, we own the property on the right where those south elevations are.
Yeah, I go up and down this area quite a bit over there in that area, and I know where the people live at there, and it's basically the same kind of housing as you go down, and they're older homes and homes that people have bought in there intentionally to leave them that way. I would still like to see if there's anything that could be worked with the residents, something that would be something to accommodate them. And also get what you want out of it, as far as that goes. But for me right now, it'd be difficult for me to make a decision on there to move forward on, to be honest.
Some of the pictures I included at the back of the packet are 2 duplexes that currently sit on Grand. Mm-hmm. And I brought those just because I think they're good visual examples of something that, at least from my perspective, and we're of course talking about opinions here, are not too offensive. In fact, I didn't realize the one house next to my church, the Methodist church, was even a duplex till I looked really closely today.
Yeah. Yeah, and then when you get on the on the South Park Avenue, most of those houses they kept with the traditional one-story homes, and as together as on Grand also. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're the last one to speak before this. The next item is staff wrap-up.
I don't believe I have too much additional things to offer other than recapping back that because this is a conditional use permit, your options are to either approve it as presented, approve it with new conditions, deny it when it comes to the next meeting, or to table it to a future agenda. I think the discussions about the parking in the front and the setbacks and the various additional uses have all been addressed thoroughly. So I will turn it back over to y'all.
Does that complete your comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The procedure in a joint special meeting is that this at this point morphs into a council new business item and as a new business resolution. And I'll ask Councilmember Hernandez if he'll place this resolution on the table.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action.
Hold on.
Hmm? it goes straight from the staff wrap up to it morphs into a council new resolution at this point.
Consideration possible action resolution number R2019-CUP18-00031. So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Well, Mayor, beforehand, I'd like to make a motion that we table this item to a further, or to a later joint public hearing.
Okay, you're asking for a motion to table.
Second.
We have a motion to table. We're in discussion with Madam Secretary.
If I may clarify, I heard postpone it to a future public hearing, which brings the question, do you want it to be a public hearing whereas everybody has a chance to participate and look at everything on it again, or do you want to bring it back just for a vote after you have additional renderings? Or
I think if we postpone it to the next JPH, allow the neighbors and the developer to see if they can come up with a compromise that everybody can agree on, and then once we come back to a JPH, it still gives the residents an opportunity to speak if a compromise is not made, and then we can make the decision at that point. So would that be a postpone or table?
it'll be postponed to the next regularly scheduled joint special meeting, which we might have a date for already?
June 17th.
June 7th.
17th.
I'm sorry, June 17th.
So with the motion table, do we amend the motion to postpone?
I think the clarification's there. If Derek is nodding his head since he's the one who made the motion.
Y'all are the lawyers.
Yes. Yes. What you said.
Now, what did the attorney decide by his comments now?
I think we have the clarification on when we're bringing it back, Mayor. Thank you. So we're able to take the vote now.
Okay, we're working a tabling motion, right?
Postponement.
Okay. Far away.
Councilmember Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion carried, 7-0. 6-0.
Motion was 7-0 to table. That's this.
Just for clarification, so all y'all know, we postponed it to the next JPH. What that does is give y'all, if y'all are willing to meet with each other, talk about what y'all can live with, talk about what y'all want, and see if y'all can come to a compromise that everybody can live with, where you can possibly get the duplex, and they can possibly get the neighbor in the condition that they want. Since we can't find a real compromise here, and we have a lot of people speaking against it, but we want you to be able to develop your property. Y'all have a little bit of time to work through that. You'll come back in. It'll be a very similar meeting. They'll have an opportunity to speak either for or against it. You'll have an opportunity to represent y'all's positions, and at that time, we'll likely vote for it.
I think that we were trying to bring ourselves up to date on what we're trying to do here in the area. I think we're now a little smarter, and we're going to be replaying. So with that information in the record, let's move in my agenda to the joint special meeting number 2, and ask the chairman of the planning commission to give us read into the record the reason why we are here tonight.
This is a conditional use permit application, CUP 19-00008. A request by Trevor Luthi, applicant, on behalf of South Fork Center Partners, LTD owner, for approval of a conditional use permit to allow a music school on 2.0348 acres tract of land located within the Business Park District 288, BP 288. General location 3422 Business Center Drive, Suite 122 in Pearland, Texas.
Moving in our agenda to item A, application information and case summary. Item 1 is staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. So the next case is a request for a music academy on Business Center Drive, which is in Business Park 288 Zone District with future land use of 288 Gateway. This is zoning and aerial map of the proposed property showing that it's located in BP 288. And it shows that it's in future land use map of 288 Gateway. Code conformance table. The proposed use is in conformance with our comprehensive plan. And the Business Center Drive is a secondary thoroughfare with sufficient width. The proposed use is consistent with UDC. The property has been platted and has access to city utilities. Staff recommends approval of the proposed CUP to allow Music Academy as it meets all of our criteria for approval. And that completes our staff report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving to staff report, applicant presentation. Is the applicant for this is here? You have the podium. And thank you for being here. Since our Mayor Pro Tem is not here, remember, give us your name for the record and try to.
Sure, my name is Trevor Luthi. I live at 4422 Plantation Pass Drive.
So you tell us your story now.
So we are the School of Rock, and we're seeking the conditional use permit to operate a premium after-school music program. So we're in a new build. There's a few businesses being built there already at 3422 Business Center Drive, and we're going to be around 2,700 square feet. We're a new franchise. So there are around 230 of these School of Rocks around the country and all over the world. We've got about 30,000 students system-wide. I come from the School of Rock up in Kingwood. I was the music director there for 5 years, and we decided to open up down here, and we're pretty excited about it. Our goal is to enrich the lives of children and adults throughout the Pearland and adjacent communities through music education. We're going to offer one-on-one private lessons, group lessons, and group performances. We intend for this location to be a premium membership-based program, but we will offer occasional scholarships and prizes for families who cannot afford our program. We're going to offer summer and holiday camps and offer opportunities for all of our students to perform out in the community. We're going to provide entertainment and booths at events throughout the community. We've done a couple of these events with pretty good success, and we've got some excitement and people who are shown interest. We'll have high-end facilities, the latest safety features, buzz indoors, camera systems, ID badges, and all that. We have designs for soundproofing, which we believe will more than suffice for the location. And we are going to adhere to any regulations or specifications required by the city or our owner, or we're willing to listen to our adjacent neighbors as well. That's it. Thank you.
Moving to item number 3 on our agenda, person wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. I'd ask our Mayor Pro Tem to pick up on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any member of the audience like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Same time, any members of the audience like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Third and final time, any members of the audience like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? No takers, Mayor.
Okay. Moving in our agenda to item B, Planning Commission, the council, and the staff will discuss this particular issue, and starting with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Chairman.
I think this business might be a good asset to the community.
That's going to complete our comments, Mayor.
That completes your report? Okay. Moving next is item 2 is the City Council discussion. Starting with Councilmember Owens.
Don't have anything, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank you for bringing this business to Pearland. I had the opportunity to go see some of the School of Rock members in Houston. A friend of mine performed there, and I was pretty amazed at how small the children were that were performing. And they were doing amazing things with instruments I could never even dream of doing. So I think it'd be a great asset to the community, get a lot of excitement going, and I look forward to maybe attending some of your concerts that you'll have.
Councilman Little.
Congratulations on the success of your previous businesses. I'm not sure why this type of business is on the CUP list anyway. I think maybe we should look at possibly removing these types of legitimate businesses from having to go through this process, but good luck.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you. I was hoping that a place called School of Rock, you'd come dressed as Gene Simmons or something for your comments. I don't know. Yeah. Someone once accused me of being a proponent of the arts, and they were right. So thanks for bringing this to Pearland.
Councilmember Perez.
Yeah, I just took my daughter to a music competition. She performed in a state competition. I understand and appreciate the value of music education. I don't have any issue with this. I will state that I have a business relationship with the owner, a Realty One, but does not affect this decision.
And Councilmember Reed.
Mayor, I have to confess that I'm actually taking guitar lessons at Mr. G's Guitars, and the only grown man that's taking those lessons, at least that I could see. So I'm definitely for any other school. I'm starting off with the acoustic guitar. I'm not very good, but I'm gonna get better. So thanks for coming to town.
Yeah, it sounds like you got some potential customers here. Make them play nice. So, moving on to agenda item 3, which will avail us with a staff wrap-up comments.
There's no additional comment, Mayor. Thank you.
It ends with a melody. Okay. Moving in our agenda. At this point, we moved to council new business, means it has morphed from a discussion from staff, planning commission, and council to a council new business item. And I'll ask Councilmember Little if he would present this as a new business item, regular new business item.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration of possible action resolution number R 2019-CUP 19-00008. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, and we have a motion on the floor. Thank you.
Councilmember Little, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
Okay, we have now moved in our agenda to new business, and which is our regular meeting that we conduct normally. This being the new business item. We usually start this earlier in the day, but we've discussed it back and forth. But if you'll please rise, we'll have an invocation by Councilmember Reed.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Mayor, we need to close the meeting.
Oh,
Close the old meeting so that P&Z can.
I missed the opportunity to close the other meeting, which it was so dear to us, I want to hang on to it. So motion closed at 7:50. Thank you. And Councilmember Owens will lead us, being one of our former military personnel, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would everyone please bow their heads? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to see another beautiful day that you've made, Lord. Lord, thank you for allowing us to make it to this meeting safely. Please watch over the decisions that are made here tonight. Please let them be thought of in your name, Lord, and to help move this city forward. Thank you for the many blessings that you bestowed upon our city, Lord. Please watch over our police and fire as they patrol our streets, Lord. Please watch over our men and women that are in service here and abroad, Lord. Please just continue to watch over us as we travel from this place. Allow everyone to make it home safely. These blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We normally move and do the invocation and pledge allegiance before we do any other talking, but now's the time to do the talking. We are in the regular meeting and roll call. We are here, and all of our council members here except for Councilmember Carbone. And at this point, I'll ask Councilmember Perez for the citizen comments. And I don't think we have any.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have any sheets for anybody who wants to speak as part of public comments, either now or on an item.
Okay. And flipping a page here, I'm moving to public hearing number 1 and ask the staff for their introduction and review of the particular item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 2 public hearings tonight related to federal community development block grants, and our grants administrator and special projects manager, Mr. Joel Hardy, will give you an overview of these.
Okay. We're now in our first public hearing, so staff review.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Wanted to predicate the public hearing presentation with the fact that we've got 2 of these tonight, and just to avoid confusion, they are addressing issues that stem from the same funding source, but 2 separate pots of money that the city is looking to be allocated to perform certain duties. We'll start off with the first public hearing, which will be on the Community Development Block Grant Program that's coming out of HUD's Disaster Recovery funding source, and that will be to discuss funds that are being made available to the city for Hurricane Harvey disaster recovery purposes through the General Land Office. The General Land Office is sort of the perfunctory conduit for funds that come to the state through HUD for disaster recovery. So when we do have a major presidentially declared disaster, these funds will come to the Texas General Land Office for the sake of addressing areas that are 80% of or more where damage from a hurricane or some other disaster has occurred, in this case Hurricane Harvey. And they come to address 2 issues, mainly housing and infrastructure issues. However, the General Land Office has been gracious and intelligent enough in its design of this program, because of the major impact of Hurricane Harvey, to expand that to include long-term resiliency in the form of economic development, housing rehab. Their programs being made available to reimburse homeowners that have had out-of-pocket experience as far as some of the funding they've had to allocate to repair their properties in ways that insurance didn't cover. So they're doing a lot of interesting things with these funds, but the dollars that will come directly to the city of Pearland right now are specifically for housing and infrastructure issues. We participated in a process very similar to the one that took place with Hurricane Ike, when HUD came and funded some of this same work, and the Houston-Galveston Area Council acts as the entity that designs the method of distribution as to how the funds that come to the state are distributed locally through the HGAC region. That method of distribution resulted in 2 significant allocations that will be coming to the state of, to city of Pearland once we complete our spending plan and submit that to the General Land Office. The first allocation is going to be pertaining to the opportunity to spend funds on local buyout or acquisition activities, and that's about $2.7 million. And we do have to make a choice as to how we spend those funds. We cannot spend them in a way that has a combined use. We have to pick whether or not we're going to use them to buy out properties or to elevate or improve areas that have been affected by Hurricane Harvey flooding. The second pot of money is really going to be used for infrastructure improvements, particularly drainage improvements, and that's about $2.6 million. And again, along with HUD funds, as similar as we do with the regular CDBG program, these funds must be used to serve those that are in the low to moderate income areas. Over the course of the last year, we have done several things to kind of prepare for these funds to be allocated. We got a very early indication that the city of Pearland would be receiving money and wanted to make sure we had kind of folded in some of our requirements into other efforts we've put into place to help the city recover. So we have had some public information sessions where we've invited citizens to come in and be informed about the city's efforts to improve drainage conditions, to buy out homes and those other things. And CDBG-DR funds have always been mentioned in accordance with that. We've got a lot of information about local damage that's occurred throughout the city, and we'll be using that in how we design and develop our plan. And we do have an existing set of resources that go along with our normal CDBG activities that come in the form of our consolidated plan, which has allowed the community to establish certain priorities as far as how we spend housing dollars related to the allocations we get from HUD. We will kind of put together a project and eligibility review for the public and council to see and comment on over the next couple of months. And we'll also seek technical assistance and training from the GLO to make sure that our plan development is in accordance with their requirement. And we'll bring that back to council and the public for review later this summer, and with the intent of having an August submission date to the GLO for our program. And those next step dates are outlined in this slide right here with several important bullet points that just we want to keep in mind as we go through the process. With that said, that wraps up my staff comment, and I'll pass back the balance to council for discussion. Thank you.
Okay, moving in our agenda to citizen to be heard, which is item 2. Councilor Perez, would you present this?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any member of the audience like to speak either for or against this item? Any member of the audience like to speak either for or against this item? Third and final time. Any member of the audience like to speak either for or against this item? No takers, Mayor.
Moving in our agenda, the public hearing agenda for council and staff discussion. The council comments is starting with Councilmember Reed.
No comment at the moment, Mayor.
Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Help me to understand, how do we select these areas?
So the funding has come to the city in a way that kind of urges us to spend it in the areas most affected by Hurricane Harvey. And I think that our intention is to, along with considerations where other funds are concerned that we've pursued, kind of mix this in with that process. Because this does have a low to moderate income requirement, we will try to prioritize projects that fit in that target area or that affect the homeowners or property owners that are low to moderate income themselves.
Okay.
And we do have a couple of areas in mind, but we want to make sure that public comment and citizen involvement throughout the process allow us to use that to prioritize where we actually spend the funds.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez.
I have no comments, Mayor. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation, Joel.
Councilmember Little. No comment, Mayor. Councilmember Moore. And Councilmember Owens.
Just one. That's how many homes were affected through Harvey this time?
So I think the information that came out of this method of distribution process and consistent with the information that we've gathered as a city, approximately 1,780 homes were affected. Most of those were not substantially affected, but the method of distribution is included in the packet that went along with this item, Councilmember Woody Owens. And that does go into greater detail about, the complexities of that issue, and it does spell out what Pearland looked like as far as its disaster-affected condition.
Thank you.
And the last item is staff discussion.
That wraps up my presentation, Your Honor.
Okay. We are now adjourn the adjournment of this public hearing. And I will open a second public hearing for staff to conclusion and review of the issues.
Okay, I could probably get away with saying ditto because these are very similar programs, but there is a minor difference when we get this money every year. And we do have to complete an action plan to do so and submit that directly to HUD. And over the course of the last, I think, 10 years that we've had this money, maybe a little bit longer, we've received a little over $4.4 million. And the most current recent provided allocation numbers indicate that we will receive $429,000 from HUD in October, and our process for planning how we use that money begins as well. We're going to try to run these programs as far as the development process concurrently. So that'll make it easier on staff, of course, and easier for the community to come in and comment and hopefully avoid any confusion. But in August, again, we'll submit an application action plan directly to HUD that will tell them exactly how we intend to spend these funds. And we've covered those requirements in the previous public hearing.
Okay. Then we move to the council and staff discussion. City Council. Councilmember Owens?
No comment.
Any comment? None? Or Council Moore? Okay, didn't hear that one. Councilman Fernandez? Okay. Councilman Perez?
No comment, Mayor.
And Councilmember Reed?
No comment, Mayor.
Okay. With that completes our discussion in public hearing number 2. We adjourn at this point at 8:05 and move to item number 7, which is the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from consent agenda, which consist of items A through G, it looks like?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item number G as in golf.
G, and what else? Only G? Okay, item G is to be removed. Councilmember Reed, would you present the consent agenda for our?
Thank you, Mayor. Move that we adopt the consent agenda with the omission of item G.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Vote.
Councilmember Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
6-0, motion carried.
For item number G. Would you present that for our consideration, item G?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration of
If you
possible
can
action.
find it.
Consideration of possible action resolution number R 2019-138. So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Item G is a recommendation for a design contract. The city competed for and received a grant under the Safe Routes to School program. And so we went through a pretty exhaustive process to evaluate different areas and rank order those and came up with 3 project areas. Those are described in the materials. So this design effort will initiate that and provide some additional options for traversing to and from public schools in a safe way.
Council have any question or comment on that staff report?
Yes, Mayor. I think Joel, was he still present? I'll borrow you for a second. So kind of coupling the discussion that you and I had earlier, how were these areas selected? And how did we prioritize which areas needed a sidewalk as opposed to areas where there's no sidewalks but are in close proximity to a school?
So in 2012, 2013, we began to put together a Safe Routes to School plan that we hired Freeze and Nichols to work collaboratively with us to produce that plan.
We basically looked at all of the schools in the area, put a 2-mile buffer around each facility, and looked at any gaps as far as walkability, crosswalks, and things of that nature, and began to prioritize where the needs were the greatest. And there were a number of schools that, of course, rose to the occasion. The plan itself and the program call for us to prioritize elementary schools and/or middle schools, but preferably elementary schools. And we, as staff, evaluated the outcomes of Freeze and Nichols' work, worked to refine that plan, and these are the projects that express the most need, and the ones that TxDOT, I believe, concluded were the ones that they wish to fund. And Trent can probably go into more detail about how that process took place.
My question, again, Joel, just covered a discussion you and I have had for a few years now. I guess just satisfy my curiosity, how well did Kirby, the west side over by Merrick and Nolan Ryan, how well did that score? Why can't we get that prioritized by TxDOT as opposed to some of these other areas?
I would have to look at the plan to see exactly where that area fared as far as comparisons, but I just don't know that offhand, but we can definitely revert back to that plan and see where that scored out.
How about Piper over by Barry Miller? Kind of same thing?
Again, I'd have to look at the plan to see what that looked like at the time.
Okay. And I apologize. I know you don't have the answer on the head, or on top of your head. I just kind of want to put it in public comment because I think that, at least for me particularly, getting that sidewalk on the west side of Kirby is something we need to do at some point expeditiously. I know it's not funded, it's not scored well on the CDBG funds in the past, but I mean, if it takes just an outright allocation in the next year's budget, I'd like to just see something move forward with that. I get more and more concerned as that road gets more and more busy that one of those kids in the apartment complex are going to clip one of those walkers. West side of Business Center, I apologize.
Councilmember Perez, we did include that project in the TERS sidewalk connectivity program that'll be taking place in a few years when the TERS is able to fund those projects.
Okay. Do you have an idea about when that schedule is? I mean, a few years is like 2021 or 2025?
Probably closer to 2025 unless the city moves forward with financing those projects earlier and then waiting on the TERS fund to reimburse the city.
Now, I don't want to delve too much into an item that's not on the agenda, but I maybe want to have a discussion about where we can prioritize that, because I do think, at least for me personally, that's a high priority. It's been so for a while, and I appreciate finding creative ways to fund it. On the engineering analysis, I presume the engineer is here. Can I borrow you for a second? How you been, Derek? I ain't seen you in a while.
Sir.
Just to satisfy, I know a question I'll get a lot, in the areas where there's roadside ditches, how are we going to balance the hydraulic needs of the ditch capacity with adding these sidewalks? Are we going to, do we have an idea of whether we're going to try and culvert it, or are we going to try and move the sidewalk into the property with an easement? Do we have a specific plan yet?
Would you give your name so we'll know who made these wonderful comments? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Derek St. John. I'm with Gage Engineering, the engineering firm that's proposed to do the design for this.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Perez, the plan is a combination of both. We're going to figure out exactly what needs to happen, but in most cases, we're going to culvert those areas where there are ditches, and we need to expand into the ditch area for the sidewalk.
Okay. Just to express my concern, if we're going to go with a culvert, which we know reduces capacity of the ditch significantly, just vet it very well, because I know the people in those areas where they have those roadside ditch and that they have that increased capacity, and they've already kind of been on the cusp of some drainage issues. We come in and fill it in, and they have drainage problems subsequent. They're going to get mad at all of us. So
we do have sufficient budget to analyze those the ditches and the culverts to make sure that they are sized adequately.
Figured you did.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the council?
St. John, Do you know a guy by the name of Dick St. John?
I do. Dick St. John, likely the same gentleman was my uncle. Well, is my uncle. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, I worked with him a long time ago. Just, you don't hear that name very often.
He spent quite a bit of time in this area before he moved away.
Yeah.
He's in Grapevine now. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we worked on Sam Houston Tollway together.
Councilman Reed. Oh,
Mayor, just real quick, I do agree with Councilman Perez when it comes to, 5, 6 years out is pretty far. I mean, to tap into the TERS and wait for that. So if we can find another method, I know it's not an agenda item specifically, but it does kind of relate to what we're talking about right now. If we can find another method or I guess come back to the table with another way that we can put that sidewalk in on the west side of Business Center Drive, I'd like to see that happen as well.
Any other comments? More? Council's run out of questions, it sounds like. But we do have a motion second on the floor, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
Okay, with that information tucked away, let's move to item 8 on our agenda packet. Matters removed from consent agenda. We just have G, and we took care of that one. We're now in new business. New business item number 1. Councilmember Perez, would you start us off on this?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, resolution number R 2019-132. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you'll allow, I'd like to take a little victory lap for the city on these next two matters here. Council's made the policy decision that we were no longer going to be in the position of providing our fire services into our unincorporated areas without any kind of compensation. And so through several processes and the residents looking at the different options, 2 new emergency service districts were proposed. And those are independent governmental agencies, special purpose districts that can do any number of ways of providing emergency services into their areas. And so the purpose of these ESDs are to find a way to provide fire and emergency medical services into those areas. They looked at their options diligently and elected to go with continuing service from the city of Pearland. We've got far and away excellent provision of service. And so these are taxing districts, and they'll be starting to charge the maximum 10-cent rate in those areas, which is then a pass-through predominantly back to the city for our services. And so number 4, we were able to work very well with both 4 and 5, their board and their attorneys, and appreciate their assistance through this work. And want to thank city staff, Mr. Hardy and Chief Riley and Mr. Coker, of course, all negotiated these. And we bring these to you for your consideration tonight. So the provisions of the contract are described in the memo. Again, they'll start to levy that after they get a budget and go through all their processes this fall, and the city of Pearland will start to receive those monies starting in our next FY 21. So again, it's going to be status quo in terms of provision of service, but at long last, the city of Pearland will provide some offset for the cost of providing and standing that availability up.
Council, any question or comment about the comments from staff?
No comment, Mayor. Well, actually, just real quick, I guess, not I guess, but great job on getting all this done. I know, we went through lawsuits and not potential lawsuits and just, a lot of back and forth with different areas of town. And so, good job to staff on actually completing this and getting everything wrapped up the way that it should be. And hopefully these citizens can appreciate it, the citizens in those areas, and we can move on.
Mayor, I'd like to also commend everybody who worked on it. I know Commissioner Stacy Adams, along with the other county commissioners, worked diligently on this issue. I've talked to a number of people about this. Those who were elected to the ESD districts worked very diligently on this. I think given the position where we revoked the annexation of these areas as well as others, and needed to find a way to continue to provide service, but in a way that is fair to the citizens of Pearland, this was really the only tool in the toolbox that really was presented something that we could say is fair. It was a difficult process. Again, I know for ESD4, chaired by Keith, that they worked very hard to try and come up with something that they felt was an agreement that served their area very well. And then, admittedly, at my request, I asked for ESD4 and 5's agreements to be exactly the same, so that caused a little bit more work on both ends, as it was essentially became a three-way negotiation. I want to commend staff for all the effort that they've done over the last few years. Somewhat unappreciated by those who are in conflict with us. I mean, and not for ill intent. They just were passionate about this issue. But staff really worked hard to find a solution here. I know Darren has spent a lot of time working on this issue. I know Clay has spent a lot of time working on this issue. So has Chief Riley. I mean, there's no shortage of people that we need to thank to where we are here. Now what we can do is we can continue to provide service. They will pay some, they can't pay all, but it allows them to at least contribute to service that they desperately need. So I think I'm just really proud of where we are and all that we've done. That's all I have, Mayor.
Any other question of council?
I had one question. It says that the district, in consideration of this limitation of the 10-cent tax rate, the district has agreed to avoid taking on debt and will not engage in capital outlays. Is that actually in the agreement? Because I couldn't find it in the agreement. Or is that just something that they just kind of verbally agreed to?
I think Your Honor, my understanding is that we have developed the agreements, terms and conditions around how the district's budget is constructed that prevents those kinds of outlays from being considered. They have an administrative component, a contingencies component for a small amount of additional funds that they may need for unplanned events and activities that may crop up. And then the remaining portion of that tax revenue that they collect is designed to come to the city for emergency services purposes.
And those provisions would be in Section 3, Terms of Compensation, more specifically subsection C and D.
Just for clarification, by inference, since they can only spend money on the administrative costs and the rest of the money comes to us, they can't spend any money on paying off debt.
That is correct.
Okay.
And do you mean D? So 3D, where it's talking about restricted to on the administrative fund?
Yes, the administrative fund, it's restricted to legal, accounting, and bookkeeping fees and services, applicable professional development, training, insurance, and reasonable costs for the establishment and implementation of the contingency fund. And so those are the only things that they can spend. Everything else outside of that would end up coming to the city.
Okay.
They would not be able to spend any money on capital improvements.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Any other question?
I just want to remind everybody that we are getting the most money that we can by state law from the ESDs to pay for their services that they have contracted with us.
Okay,
I don't think there's much left to say, to be honest with you. But I do appreciate, all the staff and everything working on this and coming to some kind of agreement through the ESDs. I think you've done a great job, and I appreciate your work.
Okay. Any other backup? My reckon. With the point, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Perez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed? Motion passed 6-0.
Moving in our agenda, item number 2, Councilman Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action resolution number R2019-133. So moved.
Second.
Council report.
Thank you, sir. And as was mentioned, this is a duplicate, but it is a separate contract with a separate legal entity, that being Emergency Services District Number 5, Brazoria County. This is for area that is coterminous with MUDs 2 and 3, and likewise had a good working relationship, and appreciate that board and their attorney working with us to come to this resolution.
Council, have any question or comment on this item? Number 1. 4. Little.
So I had a question here on ESD 4. It said that initially set aside approximately $135,000 for 2 years operating cost, and then for ESD 5 it says approximately $155,000. Is that correct? Just curious why why the difference?
So the ESD 4 was issued a basic outlay from the county for in the amount of about $20,000 to kind of give them some startup costs. They're part of a territory that does not have any additional funds for those kinds of operations. There's not a MUD district or anything like that in place. So they did receive some additional funds from the county just to start their efforts.
Okay. Thank you.
Perez.
Ditto my comments from before, Mayor.
And Councilor Reed.
No new comments, Mayor.
Okay. Madam Secretary, we have a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Hernandez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
Go to new business item number 3, Councilor Little.
Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2019-137. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, sir. So this is a little bit more complicated. The city likewise has areas in unincorporated Harris County that are not subject to any payments for the city for our services for fire EMS. We've been unable to generate any response activity from the properties there. More recently, Precinct 1, which this is part of in Harris County, did stand up and said that they had just become aware of the issue and they were interested in finding resolutions. We met with them, and the result was the request that the council has in this packet. And I'm not sure if anybody's from Harris County is here. Ms. Springer was one who signed the letter and we were working with. But so I don't want to speak for them, but their letter does say that they are requesting of the city that we continue, as we've been doing, to provide that service at no cost and indefinitely, no time horizon. We've communicated that would not be our recommendation from staff level, and that given movement on the other parts and then the general inequities, we didn't see there's any way that we could continue to do that. We do believe there is exception and rationale for continue to provide service to the county park, Tom Bass Park there. It's a non-taxing body. The call volume for fire is minimal. And, we would suggest that we continue to provide it there. If there was one of these ESDs, there wouldn't be tax base from it anyway, so it would really be not available. But as for the private properties, just can't see how, especially given the last two actions and everything else, we could continue to do that for the private properties. So looking for direction, and I should mention too, there are two other small areas in the far east part of the Harris County unincorporated area that have been picked up by another fire response area, and that was facilitated by Harris County. So those would come out of our first response areas. We continue to back up and provide our mutual aid where we can, and it makes sense, but not regular first response in those.
Councilman Reed, what's your response to that?
Thank you, Mayor. So just so I'm clear, we will be the only fire and EMS responding specifically to the park, right?
Yes, sir.
That includes the golf course and that complete area.
Yes, sir.
No industrial, no residences, no anything else.
That's our recommendation. That's not the request, just to be clear. They want us to do everything, but we are suggesting we just do the park and the golf, like you said.
And just also, how many calls have we gotten in the past 3 years? Do we have those numbers?
I used to know that. I don't know if Vance. The park?
In Tom Bass Park, combined 2017 and 2018, it's about 20 calls with, I think only one of those was the fire, the rest was EMS. And then in the northwest corner of our ETJ, it's about 17 calls in 17 and 18. And again, most of those were EMS.
Most of EMS. Yeah, I agree with the resolution as written. To just take the park back on, that was the initial conversation, not necessarily to take on the industrial sections. We've been through enough, like you just stated, with the previous agenda items, just to get to this point and create those ESDs. I don't see it necessary to go in unless they petition to be annexed to take that whole area back on, but without annexation. It's not fair to the folks that had to go and create the ESD, and not fair to the other sections that we could not annex. And so I do think that it makes sense for us to adopt this from the park standpoint, because a lot of Pearland residents do go to that park. We publicize it on our webpage, and it's become a quote unquote part of Pearland. It's south of the Beltway and whatnot. Even though it's not physically in our city limits, I do think it's something that we should be servicing. And like Chief just said, that we've had a considerable number, a decent number, not a whole bunch, but a decent number of calls from that area. And so, I know there's probably no way to tell how many of them were our residents, but I'm pretty sure there were probably a decent amount that were Pearland residents. So I'm in agreement with the resolution as written.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I think keeping Tom Bass Park, I was always been a fan of leaving that in our service area, because it is our citizens likely that use that park primarily. With the rest of the areas, look, I'm sympathetic to the fact that they're not going to have anybody that covers them, but I don't know how to be fair to all of the citizens that spoke passionately about against the annexation, which we eventually rescinded, and to all the citizens who fought hard to get an ESD in the Brazoria County ETJ so that they could fund fire and EMS, how we could go through all of that and then have a county commissioner come in kind of late and say, well, we just need more time to figure it out. I think we can certainly try and continue to work with them, but at this point, we're moving forward requiring the ESDs in Brazoria County to contribute. it would not be fair to them or to all of the people who put in time and effort on this issue for us to extend free service to the Harris County ETJ. I'm certainly willing to continue to listen, and hopefully Harris County can come up with a solution to this. But at this point, I think we've got to say enough is enough, and continuing service to them for free is just not fair to the rest of the people that were affected by this, the consequences of this annexation or lack thereof, and then the consequences of having this ESD. So I think we're making the right move about keeping the park in, leaving everything else out.
You probably remember that they told us that they were not interested in being a part of Pearland, and they did not want our terms. So.
Yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember there being a representative who stated, "We don't want any of your service. There's nothing you have that we want." I responded and said, "Well, what about fire and EMS that's been going out there for free for a while?" This is right after I think there was a life fight ambulatory call that ended up in life flight from somebody in that industrial area that ended up, I think the guy nearly lost his life. And they just didn't seem interested. Now, certainly, that individual is not elected. They don't represent everybody out there, all the employees, all the landowners, but I don't know what else to gauge it on. They have made no effort to this point to try and gain service in a fair, equitable way to the citizens of Pearland. So I think this is the only choice we have left.
Representatives?
Thank you. I'm also in agreement with this. I think it makes perfect sense. I know so many Pearlanders that use Tom Bass Park. I myself was probably one of those calls. I was driving by Tom Bass one day, and a lady was just passed out on the road, and Pearland responded we just lost quorum.
Just lost quorum, so if we could quick recess.
Yeah, 7th inning stretch.
Hold your comments.
Little?
I think we have to do this. We've done everything we can to work with Harris County. At first, they were non-responsive. Then they wanted an extension. We granted them an extension, and now they're still not doing anything. So it's not fair for the citizens of Pearland to continue to subsidize this area. So I'm in agreement.
Orem?
Agree.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes, sir. I'm in agreement. We have quite a few people from Pearland that use Tom Bass Park, and I think it's pretty extensively used in that area over there. So I'm in agreement with this.
Okay. Madam Secretary, I believe we got we got enough head counts here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we have quorum.
Councilmember Little, how do you vote? Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0 with Councilmember Perez absent from the chamber.
Moving to business item 4, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, first reading of ordinance number 1571. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. How's staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an item we're bringing back to you. Council had dealt with this. We've completed improvements to what's now known as Max Road and created what we're suggesting be called Old Max Court. And also there's a street by Zielinski Park that doesn't have an official name. And so we packaged together these items and looking for some policy direction and completion of first reading of ordinance. Mr. McDonald, I believe, has a quick PowerPoint just to refresh us on the topic. So, John, take it away.
Are you waiting for more information or, okay?
Just as a reminder of the area, the green stripe is Broadway, the blue is Max Road today. As a reminder, council has had discussions on this in both January and February of this year. After the February meeting, it was asked that the mayor send a letter to Brookside Village asking them to change Max Road within their city limits. They did respond that that was not something they wished to do. So that will mean that the city will have to rename their portion of Max Road. Staff originally came forward with two proposals, either Reed Boulevard or Manville Road. At the last meeting, the idea of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard came up as well. We did speak with the city of Houston. There was a petition, a city-led petition to rename Cottingham, which is just a part of just south of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard that goes through the Beltway to the county line. That request was tabled. It was said it didn't meet the city's requirements, that the city could not have city-initiated street. So right now, that is off the table for the city of Houston. But again, Reed Boulevard is the intersection now at Manville and Reed. There's only two addresses on Reed Boulevard. If Manville would be a continuation of the existing road onto the south and would give us a continuous segment from Bailey all the way to the future city limits at the county line. And again, here's the map. And so the question is, there is an ordinance, we just need a name to put in there. Thank you.
And again, Mayor, as John mentioned, we got the resolution. I believe it's been put on the table and looking for some direction on what name you'd like us to insert into that for this first reading and then bring it back to you.
Council have received staff report. Councilman Reed, what is your response to that?
So, I was actually the one that recommended, keeping the name the same, across the Beltway. And when you drive on the Beltway, it actually says future MLK Boulevard. Obviously, like you just stated, it's been tabled. I'm not really sure, what Houston is doing. But what I saw was an opportunity for us to, to celebrate, one, the diversity of our city. We consistently talk about and bring up the diversity of Pearland and it being one of the most diverse cities in the state, not only in the state, but in the country. And so, we're not building too many more new roads. That's one of the roads that is already coming in or will be coming across the Beltway or underneath the Beltway and connecting with whatever the name of that road is. And so, what better way to celebrate that diversity than actually naming it after, one of the champions of diversity, not just in our country, but, in the world in general. And so, that was my main thing. I also mentioned during that meeting that if we were not going to adopt the name Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and have it come across the Beltway, just as hopefully Houston does and just continues to extend it down, that we name it after the mayor. I'm very much so opposed to Manville Road. I don't see why we would want to, and no offense to Manville, they have some great folks, great council, but this is a sign that's going to go off the Beltway that's going to, it's going to signify your entry, another entryway into the city of Pearland. Right now, when you come down Pearland Parkway, you see a sign that says Pearland. You come down Kirby, same thing. Come down Cullen, same thing. Manville Road says Manville. It says, I'd rather it be Pearland Road and, the next exit is Pearland Parkway. But, we already have Max Road on there. Obviously the extended Max Road runs through Brookside Village. That portion failed. I think we should seriously consider MLK Boulevard first and foremost, as I stated before. I think council should consider taking an opportunity to adopt that name. We've adopted, like I said, Cullen. And I'm not sure, if council has looked and know who these names represent, but who Cullen is, who Makawa is, who Kirby is. But, after leaving, I actually went and did my own research to find out who these folks are. None of them have any significance to Pearland. Again, like I said, Cullen is a significant name in the Houston area in general. And so, Makawa was an Asian rice farmer, yeah. And then in Houston, yeah. But we took on that, and we're adopting, Houston things from a name standpoint. I don't know if there's plans to change the name of Cullen down the line, but if we're really thinking Pearland, then okay, let's name it Reed Road, REID Road, and let's keep it. Although I would love Reed REED, but let's name it Reed Road REID. There's already a disconnect. We've already come to the conclusion now that we are going to have some folks that are going to have to change their address, change their the name of their street, and go through that. And I hate that for those businesses. But whether we name it Manville or whatever we name it, somebody's going to have to change. Some address is going to have to change. Again, I urge council to at least consider and think about the fact that if we're not going to, or that we, think about the fact that we have the opportunity to name a street after such a champion of diversity as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If that's not something, I encourage you all second to think about, hey, naming it something that has a huge significance to Pearland and not a significance to, and not that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. doesn't have a significance to Pearland. I wouldn't be sitting up here today if it wasn't for some of the things that he's done. But if that's not the direction that the rest of council is going to go, then I really encourage you to look at Reed Road all the way through. It only makes sense, and unfortunately, we won't. Mayor Reed's not going to be here forever. I mean, none of us are going to live forever. So that's all the comments I have for right now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to start off by saying, there was much made about the fact that me and Member Reed disagreed on this issue, and we got a little passionate, but it was characterized as something was not. We got a little passionate on the issue. We talked. Maybe it got a little aggressive in our communication, but never were we disrespectful of each other's opinion. So I kind of want to say that publicly because it was expressed as if that was the case. And I have no issue at all with him from a personal reason and from a practical reason saying, why don't we name it MLK? I never did. I think the issue that we had at the time was whether we were going to change it to Max or something else. So again, just because there was a lot of narratives, there was something that calls itself a news site on Facebook was kind of characterizing our relationship as something it was not. I wanted to clarify that. Obviously, a couple of the last time we discussed this, my preference was to leave it Max, but at essentially my request, we wanted to go to Brookside Village and find out if they'll change their Max, and they're not willing to, and because they're not willing to, we don't have a choice. We can't have two parallel Max roads, especially so close to each other. It will cause all kinds of problems for people, the citizens of Brookside and the citizens of Pearland. So at that point, I can see we have to change this name. It's what we change it to. My preference is that it be Manville because it makes a contiguous road. That would be my first choice because Manville exists already, and we wouldn't have to change any names on Manville Road. And so that would make the break at Bailey, where it goes from Masters to Manville, and then Manville all the way up to the Beltway, which, again, me personally, I think that's a natural break, even though there are, as Member Reed said, there are plenty of examples where we have not made that. If that's not the case, then I'm perfectly happy with it being Reed Road, and then the break comes at 518. But then we'll have FM 1128 is Masters, then Manville, and then it gets to 518, and it's Reed, and then we get to Beltway, and then it is Cottingham. Thank you. And then it goes to MLK. If you're trying to go north along that corridor, that gets a little confusing. Whether we switch to all Manville or Manville and Reed, we don't alleviate all that confusion, but I do think we minimize it. This was kind of my, consistent with my, with the way I wanted to vote on Magnolia Parkway and losing the John Lizer honorarium because from a practical standpoint, I thought it should be one contiguous road. My opinion for that hasn't changed. I don't think there's really a wrong answer here, but I think Manville, for me personally, Manville, changing this to Manville Road from the Beltway to 518 makes the most sense to me, from a practical standpoint.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, when I found out that this road was named after Hernandez, I was going to have to fight for it, but there's still going to be one. It's just going to be in the wrong city. But I think if it's going to be named after something that is, I guess, part of the Pearland name or Pearland brand, Pearland legacy, I think Reed Road, REID, seems appropriate to me. I'd be all for it, and I don't think it would be that confusing. I think people are already used to calling 1128 40,000 different things, and this could be kind of a cool little feature and a nice tribute to, I think, a big part of Pearland. So that's all I have.
I was all for keeping it Max Road too, but that's not one of the options presented to council tonight. I wouldn't have a problem with MLK Boulevard, except for the fact when it comes time, I'm not going to, at this point in time, I'm not going to support it going all the way to Beltway 8. I think it should stop at McCard Road. I don't think a gateway into our city from one of the highest crime rate areas in Houston would be a good idea. So for those reasons, I would probably either Reed Boulevard or Little Lane. But right now, I'd probably go with Reed.
Yeah. So I have a question before I make my comments. Where does it change from Manville Road to something else on, I don't know, further south of us?
It's at Bailey Road. South of Bailey Road is, I believe, Masters, and from Bailey Road north, it's Manville.
Into 518.
No matter what we do here, it's still going to be a hodgepodge of names.
Well, there's nothing that says we can't amend and change Manville all the way down. We're gonna call 1128. We're gonna call it Manville. We're gonna call it Reed for the little section by the grocery store. Max. But at the end of the day, we can change the name.
Yeah.
If I could, Mayor Reed, we're pro trying to move in some consistency. I just caution, we haven't noticed anybody south of FM 518, and so that's not on the resolution. And I believe there are more businesses and so forth along that stretch. So, the topic before us is trying to consolidate for at least north of 518 and up to McCard Road and go from there. But I hear you about, it was kind of weird. Ironically, Manville Road is only Manville Road in Pearland.
That changes my thought process completely. I would be in favor of Reed Road, but I hate to lose the opportunity to be able to name a road, MLK, because we don't have one, and I don't know when we would get a road that we would have that opportunity. Manville Road does seem to make sense, but now that I know it's going to be hodgepodge no matter what through the city, I can't stand on saying, well, it makes more sense to do that, because after Bailey, it's not Manville Road.
Okay. Councilman Owens?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, on the road, but you get the same thing on 35, where it goes from Telephone to 35 into Main Street. All of them have different names as it go through. And, I don't like the idea of doing Manville all the way through. We're at a point now that we're a cut-through city. Everything south of us now is coming through. And so I don't have a problem coming in with Reed Road through there.
That complete our list of people there.
I was trying to keep score, and I think there's 3 Reeds and 2 MLK leans and 1 undecided.
I think, at least from what I hear, I think there's none of us that would object to it being Reed. There's a few that object to MLK, and there's a few that object to Manville. So maybe that's the one thing we can all agree on.
Am I the undecided?
That's what I had you down for, but.
Okay, MLK.
Now we're at like a 3-way tie, so
Okay.
I don't.
I don't, personally, I don't, just me inventory, I don't think there's enough votes to do MLK. I don't think there's enough votes to do Manville, but there are plenty enough votes to do Reed. So maybe we just kind of all agree to compromise on Reed. We do nothing with Manville south of 518, but to second member Reed, R-E-E-D, comments. Maybe at a future agenda item, we see if there's motivation by council to make the entire corridor Reed from Bailey to the Beltway. And maybe that's the best compromise position.
You can always come in and name northbound one name and southbound the other.
No, let's not do that. We're not doing that. No, hell no, we can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Garen, to make it
I'll make a motion that council votes on renaming Max Road, Reed Road from 518 to Beltway 8.
Second.
So is this motion outside of the motion?
Yeah, it's really going to be ultimately be treated as an amendment. The original motion did not specify, because there were 3 options in your packet, and it didn't specify which option. We left that open for council. So if Councilmember Little, I guess the better way to make that motion would be a motion to amend the original motion to include that option for naming it as Reed Road.
Currently, it's Reed Boulevard. So if you want to keep it Reed Boulevard versus Reed Road.
Reed Boulevard. Maybe to also address the comment made by Member Moore and Member Reed, at the next thoroughfare update, can we look at any roadway in our future thoroughfare plan that is minimally impactful, maybe a major collector or above, that could possibly be treated as an honorarium for MLK, but would not affect very many addresses that currently exist.
Councilmember Perez, we'll take a look at that, the next major thoroughfare update, to see if there is any potential out there, and then we'll coordinate with planning department as well.
Thanks, sir.
So if you want to call for the vote on the amendment, Mayor, if you're ready for that, that would be.
And just to clarify, Mayor Reed, I believe Councilmember Little's motion, just to clarify, Councilmember Little was to amend the original motion, is that correct? To reflect the naming of the road as Reed Boulevard. Correct?
R-E-I-D.
With R-E.
We're going to share it.
I already got one in Houston, Mayor. You got it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a motion and a second. A motion to amend. Councilmember Moore, how do you vote?
Just for Reed Road, right?
Yes, motion to amend.
Correct. And then after this vote, then we'll come back and vote on the amended motion.
No.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Motion to amend 5-1. Now we'll make a motion on the amended motion. Councilmember Little, how do you vote? Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Whoa. Read.
Councilmember Reed?
No.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion to amended motion passed 5-1.
Is that right? Get the street sweeper out there. Okay, moving to new business item number 5. Councilmember Owens.
Second.
Ready, Mayor?
Okay, we had a motion and a second, I heard.
Thank you.
Staff report.
So this is a zoning request for 3 acres just off of Cullen near Dawson High School. They're seeking to go to a large residential lot designation, and I believe we've seen this and have positive recommendation for you.
We could have solved it with the time. What was that last comment?
Recommendation, we had a positive staff recommendation, I believe, so. Correct.
And positive from the Planning and Zoning
And
Commission.
P&Z as well.
Okay.
That's all I have, sir.
That was staff report.
Yes, sir.
What does council response to that staff report?
No comment, Mayor.
No comment.
Okay.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment.
Ready to vote.
Councilmember Owens, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed? Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Absent.
Did you get all the votes in?
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Motion passed 5.
Oh, I didn't vote. Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0. 5-0 with Councilmember Little absent from the chambers.
Does that complete your head count?
Yep.
Okay. With that, then let's move to item number 6, which does Councilmember Reed. Present it.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2019-134. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, sir. We've been diligently trying to build out a fiber communications network through the city. It's important for our signals and our water and wastewater plants. Also provides some additional communications for other operations, but the utilities are the driver for this. Council may recall that we had, this is a couple of different projects bundled together. We had one that we had brought to you and ended up rejecting those bids because we had some concerns about the bid. So we folded it into this other set. And so we bid that out and recommending going with the firm, fiber optic network project. And so we're going to, we do need to make an allocation from fund balance towards this, and that's included in the motion and the resolution for this. TDC2 is the vendor, sorry.
Okay. Council, you've heard the staff report. 1, 2, 5, 6. Yeah.
No comment, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Hernandez. Staff report.
No, I think this is great. Much needed thing for a smart city, so I'm all for it.
Little.
No comment.
Moore. Councilman Owens.
No comment.
No comment. Okay. Well, does that leave us with a motion second on floor?
Yep, I believe it's been entered, so it's up to you if you want to call the vote.
Call the vote.
Yeah.
Councilmember Perez, how do you
Aye.
vote? Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0 with Councilmember Reed absent from the chambers.
Moving to item number 7. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, resolution number R 2019-127. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thanks, sir. This is a contract, and it's gone through. It's already been bid through the interlocal cooperative purchasing agreement with Brazoria County, and this would give us access to hot asphalt for our paving operations, repairs. Similar to what you saw last week, this is contingent upon getting budgetary authority, but we need to have the contract in place, and then we'll be able to access this through the bid board. And the estimated amount for a full calendar year, 12 months, would be the $1 million. But again, this is going to be dependent upon getting the budget amount ready for this. This is independent of some of the other work we've done separately with Brazoria County and their roads department. But this is for our neighborhood streets and other road work.
No comment, Mayor.
Council, any questions, comments on item number 7?
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Reed, oh, you were stepped out.
No comment. Thank you.
Moore. Councilmember Moore and Councilmember Owens.
Comment.
I believe we have a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Perez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0.
Moving to item number 10, Mayor, Council issues for council consideration and discussion. We had no request. Item 11 is new business continued, none. We just finished. Item 12 is other business. There is none. We have completed that with no item 7. The last one is item 13. It says adjourn, which we shall do at 9:05.